Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Improvement era from August 1932, and this article is entitled Greatness in Men, Stephen L. Richards by Bryant S. Hinckley. I realized after the fact that when I was doing the article on George F. Richards, I completely neglected to mention Stephen L. Richards, and I'm not sure if he belongs to that family grouping or not. So we will find out. So I had previously mentioned that George F. Richards was the son of Franklin D. Richards and was the nephew of Willard Richards. And then he was the father of LeGrand Richards. But I completely neglected to check out if he was related to Stephen L. Richards. I apologize for that, and I don't know if this person is related to that Richards clan or not, but we will find out, hopefully. If it doesn't mention it, I will look it up later. And, I have to say I don't know that much about this person. I think he had something to do with the radio, I want to say. Like setting up the radio programs, but that's vague and it could be somebody else I was thinking of. But I think it was him who was responsible for the radio programs and eventually hired Gordon B. Hinckley back in the day. I could be wrong, I could be mixing up with someone else, so we will find out. Also, this article only goes up to 1932, and so we will have to do some fact checking after the fact later. Anyways, I thought that you might find this one interesting, though, being another relatively well-known apostle, yeah? Most people should have at least heard of him, I'm hoping. Anyway, so let's find out more about him, because I don't know that much about his life, yeah? So it starts out with a little quote, and it says, "Log cabins, close acquaintance with the sturdy soil, pioneering experiences have produced in America many great characters. Among them is that of Stephen L. Richards, who is made by President Hinckley to appear to be as tolerant as nature and as steady as the hills." It's interesting the way they worded that. Who was made by President Hinckley to appear to be as tolerant as nature and steady as the hills. Doesn't that mean he wasn't? And that Bryant S. Hinckley made him appear that way? I don't know, that's a really strange wording. I'm assuming that blurb is by the editor. So there's a picture of him. Just from appearance, I really couldn't say if he was related to the other Richardses or not. It's just, maybe a touch similar to Willard Richards. I'll throw an image up here just for funsies, and I'll compare him to the others. So let's go through our gambit here. Let's look at him next to Willard Richards, next to Franklin D. Richards, next to George F. Richards, who is the same generation as him, or next to LeGrand Richards. I don't know, not sure. All right. Stephen L. Richards, that's what the caption says, so it's not that deep. That's just a portrait. Okay. Stephen L. Richards hails by direct descent from Dr. Willard Richards. There you go. George F. Richards was his nephew, Willard Richards' his nephew. He was the son of Franklin D. Richards, who must have been brothers with Willard Richards. And then Stephen L. Richards is then direct descendant, so I'm assuming grandson, just based on generation and how much time has passed, but we will find out, hopefully. Who was President Young's counselor and who was in Carthage jail on that fatal afternoon on June 27th, 1844, when the prophet Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram were martyred, and when his only other companion, John Taylor, was savagely wounded, his life being miraculously spared by the assassin's bullet striking a watch which he carried in his vest pocket. However, they also neglect to mention that Willard Richards was a doctor, a medical doctor. So the fact that he survived could also be partly due to Willard Richards having been in the room at the time. Now, Willard Richards was not hurt during Carthage. He was shoved behind a door, and so they didn't even notice he was there, and he couldn't push his way out because all the mob was pushing the door backwards towards him. So he kind of got squished back there, but he didn't get injured. And so then after they all left, he was able to come out perfectly fine and probably saved John Taylor's life. And so I think that's a point that we have very often neglected in telling that story. Willard Richards probably saved John Taylor's life. You know, just, I don't know for sure, but like considering how many times he was shot, I think that that's fairly likely. He was able to stop the bleeding, possibly. All right, you know, don't forget that. Willard Richards was pretty impressive on his own. All right, moving on. Sorry, that's a historical rant from me, because they didn't even sell it like that themselves. Like when people asked them about it, they're like, no, it was his watch that stopped the bullet. That's why. Yes, the watch stopped a bullet. He was shot like 5 other times or something ridiculous. And so, you know, don't you think he would have died anyway if he hadn't had a doctor there in the room when he was shot? I don't know. It's just, you know, just thought I'd throw that out there. This conversation, which took place in the jail a few minutes before the attack, reveals the caliber of Willard Richards. Speaking to him, Joseph Smith said, "If we go into the cell, will you go with us?" The doctor answered, "Brother Joseph, you did not ask me to cross the river with you. You did not ask me to come to Carthage. You did not ask me to come to jail with you. You do not think I will desert you now. But I will tell you what I will do. If you are condemned to be hung for treason, I will be hung in your stead, and you will go free." Joseph said, "You cannot." The doctor replied, "I will." Willard Richards not only witnessed this terrible tragedy, but did all he could to defend the prophet and patriarch and to care for John Taylor. There you go. Not a drop of Dr. Richards' blood was shed. Yeah, he was just lucky, honestly. Anyways, but this isn't even about Willard Richards. Okay, moving on. Stephen L. Richards. Dr. Stephen L. Richards, the father of Apostle Stephen L. Richards. Okay, so he was named after his father, I'm assuming. It doesn't look like he was a junior, though, if his middle name was not the same. Yeah, it might have had the same initial. That doesn't mean it was the same, you know. I wish they would specify, though. Like, tell us what his father's middle name was, so that we can, you know, separate it from him. So, Dr. Stephen L. Richards, the father of Apostle Stephen L. Richards, I'm assuming the son of Willard Richards, was a quiet man of sterling worth, known for the gentleness of his disposition and for his universal kindness and consideration for the poor. He was highly respected in his profession and greatly beloved by all who knew him. His life was full of unrecorded deeds of mercy and generosity. As a father and husband, a homemaker and friend, he had few equals. The Richards family has been prominent in business and professional pursuits since the establishment of this Commonwealth, and were prominent among the early settlers of America. They have been distinguished for their sagacity in business and for their independent thinking. They have been religious people, but religion with them is not merely emotionalism. It must appeal to their reason to claim their allegiance. Yeah. His ancestors on his mother's side were also distinguished for their initiative and leadership. His mother, Emma Louise Stainer Richards, a daughter of the late Arthur Stainer, who was instrumental in promoting the sugar industry in Utah, is a woman of unusual dignity, rare soundness of judgment, and sweetness of character, who has written upon the countenances of her children the stamp of nobility. She is the mother of 10 children, 6 sons, and 1 daughter now living. Her sons, Stephen L., Claude, Dr. G. Jill? I am not sure where to read that. Dr. G. Jill Stainer. Yeah? Willard and Russell. Oh, no, I think Stainer is another person. Willard, okay, Stainer. Let me get this right. Dr. G. Jill Stainer, Willard, and Russell, okay, are all men of intelligence, initiative, and capacity. The devotion and consideration of these boys for their parents has called forth universal respect and admiration. Her daughter, Mrs. Grace Richards Warner, is a woman of the same superior type as her mother. Stephen L. was born in Mendon, Cache County, Utah, June 18, 1879, and subsequently moved with his parents to Farmington, Utah. He attended the public school, Davis Stake Academy, LDS University, Salt Lake High School, and University of Utah. His professional training was received at the University of Michigan and the University of Chicago. From the latter institution, he received the LLB degree. He was the first Utah student to be graduated from the law school of the University of Chicago and was a member of the first class ever graduated in law from that institution, receiving a cum laude degree. Congratulations. In case you're not familiar, there are two levels of honors. You can get cum laude, which is honors, and you get summa cum laude, which is high honors. So receiving cum laude and a law degree, I mean, that must be very difficult. I was going to say LLB, I think that's is a law degree, right? I can't quite remember what it stands for, but I don't think it's important. He has been active in the church from his boyhood, serving officially in the Sunday School, Mutual Improvement Association, religion class. Following the death of George Reynolds, he was appointed second assistant to President Joseph F. Smith, who was general superintendent of the Sunday schools. He was second assistant in the Sunday school. Okay, cool. He was principal of the Malad City Schools and served for 10 years as a member of the law faculty of the University of Utah and was tendered a professorship in the University of Missouri, which he declined. Stephen L. Richards was called to the apostleship and set apart to that office by President Joseph F. Smith, January 18, 1917, and has been very active in this service. His training and ability eminently fit him for this high calling. At home, he has served on important committees and he has traveled extensively throughout the church in the discharge of his apostolic duties. February 21, 1900, he married Irene Merrill, a daughter of Clarence Merrill and Bathsheba Smith, a woman of superior intellect, refined and artistic temperament, devoted and happy in her family, cooperating with and encouraging her husband in every undertaking, submerging all her interests in the interests of others. This marriage has been blessed with 9 children: Lynn Stephen, Irene Lewis, Lois Bathsheba, Alice Layla, Helen Merrill, Georgia Jill, Joseph Albert, Philip Longstroth, and Richard Merrill. Okay, let's take a look at some of the pictures. So this one is 4 generations. So it looks like I am not sure who these people are. Okay, one of them is probably Stephen L. Richards. I'm assuming one of them is not Willard Richards, considering he died in like the 1850s. Yeah, and photography being prohibitively expensive at the time, I'm just taking a wild guess that it's not Willard Richards in the photo. It could possibly be Willard Richards' widow, however, in which case it might be Dr. Stephen L. Richards, his father, and himself, and his child. I don't know if it's which child it is, but one of his children. Yeah. Mrs. Richards at playtime on the swing. That's random. I'm sorry, there's like a log cabin in the background. Did they live in a log cabin? I find that a better question than why in the world she's sitting on a swing. But why not, I mean, come on. So, and then this is a very dark, hard to see picture. It says, at a rodeo, he lassoed a wild horse with the first throw of the lariat. Okay, that's kind of random too. So apparently he is good at rodeo kinds of things. Wouldn't have thought it of a law student, but hey, everybody, diversity. Everybody's different. The home life of brother and sister Richards, which began under extraordinary circumstances, has never lost any of the romance and adventure that marked its beginning. They were married late in February and early in March moved into a 1-room log cabin on a ranch in Idaho. Okay, maybe that is their log cabin then. In a land of magnificent distances, this cabin was a mile from the nearest house. Stephen L. was not yet 21, ambitious and eager for adventure. That is a little strange for him, though. He studied in Michigan and Chicago and became a lawyer, what in the world was he doing in a 1-room cabin in Idaho? I guess this picture, then, was probably at his cabin. Those were heroic but halcyon days for both of them. It is not the task of a novice to break broncos and milk wild cows. It requires not only courage to drive a 4-horse team over rough canyon roads, hitched to a wagon loaded with logs. It required skill, strength, agility, and resourcefulness, all of which Stephen L. had, and he had got out of this hard and dangerous work the thrill and satisfaction which comes from meeting difficult situations and mastering them. He did heroically the part of a frontiersman, and it will remain eternally to his credit. Why eternally to his credit? Is there like something inherently holy about having a ranch? I don't know, like it's just a little bit strange to say it that way. While there is no evidence of those rough and tumble days in his appearance, and while they seem far removed from him as he sits at ease in the council chambers of administrators and executors of large affairs, or stands on the platform pleading the cause of justice, or in the pulpit appealing to young people to give their allegiance to the faith of their fathers, still those hard days were highly profitable. Many of those experiences may have been difficult, but these young people had brave hearts. Some of the things which they did read like fairy tales. Picture, if you will, this young bride reared in the city, unacquainted with pioneer life, sitting by a fire in a lowly cabin, waiting through the long hours of the night for the return of her belated husband, who was lost in a blizzard, or holding a fractious horse while the young frontiersman cautiously harnessed it and skillfully hitched it to the wagon. Okay. I'm sorry, but like, is that or is that not relatively normal behavior back in those days? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like holy, quote unquote, or sanctifying the way they're describing it. It sounds like work, yeah, but not, I don't know. It seems like they're kind of holding this up as like this standard of the way people should be, you know? And it just seems really weird. Like, why is that the way people should be, you know? These may have been hard days, but they were happy ones, and although the wheat which he harvested and hauled by team from Malad to Colliston brought him only 40 cents a bushel, and the hay which he'd stacked on the ranch sold for $3 a ton, those were profitable days. They gave him an appreciation of the effort required to produce things, and put him in contact with the soil and in touch with nature, all of which helped to sober his thinking and to solidify his character. Sure, the people of the nearby settlements in Idaho became acquainted with this young rancher and discovered that he was a man of ability and learning, and they persuaded him to accept the principalship of the public schools of Malad. Why? He was a lawyer. Like, you want him to become the principal of your school? Like, why don't you pick a teacher to do that? He carried this work efficiently and won the confidence and esteem not only of his teachers, but of the community. Several years after, and when he made a visit there, one of his friends remarked, "Steve, you still know everybody. Why, you know every dog and cat in Malad Valley." Well, that's probably true considering how few people there were. It was while here that he was inspired with an ambition to become a lawyer. Through his resourcefulness and diligence, he accumulated money enough to make a start. He took his wife and children to Ann Arbor, that's in Michigan, and entered the law department of the University of Michigan, from which many of the leading lawyers of Utah had graduated. In Michigan, he was soon recognized for his ability. He became orator of his class and secretary of the Webster Debating Society. He went from Michigan to the University of Chicago, where he completed his professional training. Yes, we covered that. Strange. Okay, so that was way after then, after he became principal. Then there's a picture, Mrs. Irene Merrill Richards at the time of marriage. Very pretty girl, since they were both like 21. I mean, young people, just starting out, that's all. To those familiar with his splendid qualifications, his attitude, the effectiveness with which he works, his fidelity to the truth, his devotion to duty, his pleasing personality, it is easy to understand how he made such rapid progress in building for himself an enviable place in the confidence of the community. Analytical in his mental processes, don't you have to be a lawyer? Yet not so technical in his consideration of legal questions as to lose the proper perspective of the case as a whole, and guided by a high and constant desire to promote justice, there is every assurance that he had continued to devote his great talents to his chosen profession. he would have been a brilliant and outstanding member of the bar. And there's an asterisk, which leads down to, at the bottom, it says, estimate of Jesse R.S. Budge, whoever that is. Because, opinions of certain people are more important than others. This training and experience have given him a larger vision and a broader understanding of human affairs. As a result, his judgment in council and his teachings in public and in private are influenced by the fundamental legal principles which he accepts for his guidance. From a family chronicle furnished by his wife, we quote, "Passed the bar, tried his first case January 11, 1905 in Malad, Idaho." In referring to this case, his father, Dr. Stephen L. Richards, said, "The operation was successful, but the patient died." Is this a veiled inference that he lost the case? Maybe he did. You can't win everything. Gosh. Ugh. Who cares? You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but who cares? He is judiciously minded. He can quickly analyze the most intricate and complicated problem and state it with an unsurpassed clearness and nicety of diction. His briefs and discourses are models of the best English. Okay, so he's a decent writer, yeah? As an advocate, we do not know his superior. He is an able and conscientious lawyer, eminently successful in his private practice. Of late years, such time as he could give has been given to directorship work. I was going to say dictatorship. I hope not. Okay, directorship work. He is an officer and director of some of the largest and most important corporations of the state and is one of the safest counselors at the Salt Lake Bar. Safest, huh? Capacity, versatility, and dispatch are among his characteristics. Safest counselors at the bar. What does that mean, to be like a safe lawyer? What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea what they're trying to say. At the time of his selection as an apostle, he was a senior member of the law firm of Richards, Hart, and Van Dam, and had a lucrative practice, but on receiving this appointment, he closed his office and gave his undivided attention to his new calling. Good. His political experiences are interesting. He was elected city attorney of Murray, why Murray? When did he live there? Was candidate on the Democratic ticket for a member of the state legislature, candidate on Democratic ticket for the state Senate, candidate on Democratic ticket for city attorney of Salt Lake City, named for governor at the Democratic Convention of 1916 after having previously declined to run, and was defeated by Governor Bamberger on the 4th ballot, receiving the next highest number of votes. I'm not sure why they mentioned this, because it sounds like he's not the very good politician, or he would have been elected, So he was on lots of ballots, but you can put yourself on lots of ballots just by running. You don't have to get any votes to do that. So, I don't know. Is that an accomplishment or not? Because I kind of don't think it is. Just my opinion. His business ability is clearly shown by the following. He is vice president and director of Amalgamated Sugar Company, director and member of Executive Committee of Utah State National Bank, director of ZCMI, director of Utah Oil Refining Company, vice president director of Granite Furniture Company, that's a new one, director of Zion's Securities Corporation, director of Temple Square Hotel, another new one, president of Wasatch Land and Improvement Company, formerly president of Sugar Beet Financial Corporation, an intermediary company leading about $14 million of war finance corporation funds to local sugar companies about 1917 or 18. Whew. Okay. The love of home and kindred is deep in the dominant passion of his life, and he knows how to build a home, and his wife knows how to make it an abiding place for one's affections. Okay. All of the directorships they listed, more than half of them are ones that are on almost everybody's. So I'm not, that surprised. It makes me think that when you're an apostle, you're automatically on the board of directors of a bunch of places, at least at that time. I don't think it's the case anymore, but, maybe it is, I don't know. Here's a couple more pictures. The farm, Pleasant View, Idaho. Okay, why are they showing this? Didn't he live in Malad? Okay, the present Richard's home, much larger, but he also has a bajillion kids, so, Stephen L. Richards at the time of his marriage. Yeah, young person. He looks really young, actually, in there. Maybe he looks younger than he does. Than he actually is, I mean. Alright, Stephen L. Richards has the rare capacity of making dreams realities, of shaking results out of confused situations. While he is practical, he is artistic in temperament. Things must be beautiful in perspective and fine in technique to satisfy his taste. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. He is a natural builder and has never built anything cheap or shabby. Building is almost a passion with him. He felled, squared, and hauled with a 4-horse team from a canyon 40 miles away the logs with which his first home was built. A neat and beautiful little one on a ranch in Idaho. There is always a hospitality about his home that is at once chivalrous and warm-hearted. Okay. The bride of his young manhood has fostered and encouraged this native love for the beautiful, which is so strong in him. Whether it was a dirt-roofed cabin on a remote ranch or a modern home among the finest residences of the city, Irene Richards would decorate it, embellish it, and adorn it with that mystic atmosphere which makes a home. She is an artist in homemaking and all real art and has the finest feeling in it. Okay, I like that she's an artist. I don't really like that they emphasized how good of a decorator she is first. Like, it says that she is an artist in homemaking and all real art. That's a really weird way of saying that. Why don't you just say that she's an artist in all ways? Like, if she's an artist, then she paints and she sculpts and, and she, sews and, all those things that you do when you're trying to create something beautiful. It's not only homemaking. It's not always like the number one thing on the top of the list, you know what I mean? There is a congeniality, a camaraderie, a committee of interest between the couple that has made every hour happy. He has the spirit of adventure tempered with caution. She has confidence in his judgment and admiration for his courage. They team beautifully. Their married life has been a long romance, and their home a center from which has radiated a filial love which is at once strong and beautiful. His daughter Alice has voiced in these lines the admiration which the children hold for their father. "Now give me a father with a brilliant mind," said Brother Lynn, "and he must be kind," echoed Sister Lewis, "and generous too, and really unselfish through and through. I want my father to be kingly great, whom men will honor and decorate." Said Lois in that great council above, "I want a father that I can love, for all he will surely mean to me." Said Allie, "Now, Helen, what will your father be?" "God will choose him and set him apart on high, and his wisdom and glory will reach the sky." "Yes, surely my father must human be," said Georgia Jill. "Understanding, too," said Joe. "Now, Phil, will your father be dark like you, and handsome and gay and charming too?" "It's a pretty big order already, I see," shouted young Dick, "but my father must be a good friend and a real pal to you and to me." Now when all our desires were spoken and through, God smiled on us all and sent us to you. Well, that's cute. It's not particularly literary, but, trying to make it rhyme and stuff, it's not the best poem in the world. It's sweet, it's a sweet sentiment about how they feel about their father. That's cute. I'm not sure why they specifically wanted to publish it, though. Like, they could have just said, yeah, like, his children felt that he was, had all these great qualities, but instead they had to actually quote the terrible poem. I'm sorry, but it sounds like a 10-year-old made that. And maybe she did make it when she was 10, but, I don't know. It just seems really strange that they would quote it here. I'm sorry. Moving on. On the occasion of Brother Richard's 52nd birthday, his son Lynn, a brilliant young lawyer, wrote to his father, "Dear Father, the 18th of this month is a glorious day to me. There are few who have the opportunity to enjoy the intimate association of so noble a character and so fond a parent as I have been privileged to enjoy. My gratefulness to you is only marred by my realization that with such an influence I have failed to attain a position comparable to the opportunities I have enjoyed. But be that as it may, I nevertheless am grateful to you and to my Heavenly Father for this privilege and opportunity. Brother Richard's replying said in part, Dear son, few things could have more encouraging and comforting to me than your letter. I am sincerely grateful for your devotion and your love. Your life and affection are the realization of one of my fondest aspirations. To have one's eldest son so noble and true with so much promise for the future must ever be the consummation of a man's highest ideals. I pray that my other sons may emulate the example you have set for them. The Lord has been most gracious and merciful to me. I thank him and hope soon to be able to put forth more effective effort to show my devotion. Affectionately, Father. See, now that's well written. Anyways, both of them were, but particularly Stephen L. Richards' reply. Yeah, it's lovely, and I like the sentiment, both of them. So I guess they're quoting all of these to say that he had a lot of good qualities, but like, you know, he was a good parent. You kind of can summarize it by that. We are permitted, through the kindness of Mrs. Richards, to select from a personal record some very interesting information with reference to Brother Richard's early life. The heroic and humorous are delightfully intermingled in these experiences. Okay, here we go. Continued on page 604. Cut 4 teeth at 4 months. Gosh! And may we add all of his wisdom teeth early. When 10 years of age, he drove a wagon with a hay rack loaded with furniture from Farmington to Sugar House and led a cow. Good for a 10-year-old boy. While sleigh riding on an avenue in the city, he was run into by a horse coming out of an alley, which cut his leg badly. While they were sewing up the wound, he got the other leg free and kicked the doctor across the room. Jeez. That's nothing to be proud of. He probably would have starred as a soccer player. No. Absolutely not. He was hurt and was in pain and was reacting in... like, anybody can react like that, but, like, kicking a doctor is not a good thing. Like, a doctor has to be very patient because they get kicked a lot. Like, healthcare workers, even today, even with their security measures and stuff, still get hit and kicked and bitten. And they just have to deal with it most of the time. The amount of abuse they have to deal with is horrendous. And making that into a joke and be like, oh, he was going to be a soccer player. Oh my gosh. No, he was in pain and someone should have held him down. Gosh. While in a canyon one day, he saw a fisherman with his line hooked in a tree. Seeing the difficulty, Stephen said, Shall I shoot the limb off for you? No, you can't hit it, the worried fisherman answered. In a little while again, Stephen said, Better let me shoot the limb off. The man answered, Go away, boy, you can't do it. But Stephen persisted, and finally the exasperated man said, Fire away, you can't hit it. Steve knew he could, and he did. By Jove, kid, you've got a good eye. Thanks. At a rodeo, he lassoed a wild horse with the first throw of the lariat, an echo of his ranch days. He drove the second auto south of Provo through Bear Valley and Panguitch. That was before the days of highways or self-starters. Farmers for 20 miles around brought their families to see the auto pass on the road. It was a real curiosity in those days. He has since driven by auto from Boston to San Francisco. Gosh! The first cars went really slow, too. Like, they were super heavy. And they had no safety features. So if you were in an accident, you basically were just, hoping that you would be okay. Now, to be fair, they had really sturdy frames and were extremely heavy, but at the same time, you could still get hurt very badly in an accident. But at the same time, anyways. So he seems almost like a walking contradiction. You have this side of him that is very folksy and ranch work, rodeos and a good shot and stuff like that. And then on the other hand, he's a lawyer and has run for office like 15 times and lost every time. I don't know, it just seems really strange. We regret that the limits of this article are such that we cannot include numerous other experiences. Okay. Stephen L. Richards is an eloquent preacher. He is logical and philosophical in his thinking, with a poetic imagination, rare descriptive powers, and a clear, well-modulated orotund voice. His sermons are compact with meaning and convincing in argument. One never hears or reads his discourses on such subjects as the home, the power of resistance, personality of God, youth, and kindred topics without being lifted up and impressed with his magnificent interpretation of Mormonism and his tolerant, appealing attitude toward humanity. We quote from his discourse on youth. Youth should know that obedience is not bondage, but liberty. Liberty under law, that the only real freedom is freedom from our weaknesses, from the vices, the remorse of conscience, and the infraction of law. When youth understands that the bending of the will in obedience tends to liberty and joy, then lawlessness, disrespect, and irreverence will wane. What a glorious age of promise youth is, when life is the bud and early blossom, when each experience is fresh with curiosity and adventure. I think that if we may envy anything, it is the life and vitality of youth. I would not rob it of its joy and its sparkle. I would only add to its richness by securing its enjoyment through the passing years. I know that a real appreciation of the gospel will do that. Gospel truth will also quicken the impulse of the Spirit, and the Spirit is the life of man. It unfolds new visions as knowledge increases, and these new visions keep life ever new. So in the gospel life there is youth even in old age. God bless youth that they may understand truth and God bless us that we may understand youth. There you go. Dignified in appearance, gracious in manner, loyal to his friends and admired by them, a lover of the great outdoors and all nature, himself well educated and a devotee of education, modest and unobtrusive, but with faith in the soundness and rectitude of his convictions, bringing a quiet self-assurance, devoted and supremely happy in his domestic life, successful in his work, an able lawyer, an eloquent preacher, a sagacious I can speak, and far-sighted businessman with a taste for politics and a talent for statesmanship and diplomacy. He is indeed a leader of men. He belongs to the intellectual and ethical aristocracy of the world. His full allegiance and all his splendid powers are, without reserve, dedicated to the service of the great church of which he is a chosen apostle. Whew, pretty sure that's the end of the article. Yeah. That was longer than I was expecting it to be. Especially considering he hadn't even been an apostle for very long, like less than 20 years. Although, I don't know, it was a chunk of time. Let's see. Let's look him up. Alrighty. The thing that I have heard about him is that he had no middle name. Well, he did, but he had a middle initial, not a middle name. And so one of the things that I have been careful of on my website is to not put a dot after his name, because if you put a dot, then it stands for something. Like, I believe his father was Stephen Longstroth Richards or something like that, whereas he was Stephen L. He didn't have a middle name, just a middle initial. So, yeah, Stephen L. Richards. His middle name is L. It doesn't stand for anything. Okay? That's what I understood anyway. I am hoping that nothing contradicts that I'm going to read. But I think that's right. Okay. All right. Stephen L. Richards. Okay, it's not too long, so we'll just read it. June 18th, 1879 to May 19th, 1959. So he lived another 27 years after this article, and that's part of the reason why it didn't cover that much of his life. Was a prominent leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. He was a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the LDS Church and the first counselor in the first presidency, which they did not mention because it was after this fact. And that was later in life, where he was called as first counselor in the first presidency with David O. McKay. All right, early life. Richards was born in Mendon, Utah Territory. He was the oldest of 10 children born to Stephen Longstroth Richards and Emma Louise Stainer. Yeah. I'm not sure why they didn't give him the same middle name as his father and, like, you know, made him a junior, but they didn't. So but it's confusing because he has a middle name, his middle name is L. So, like, if you compare that to, like, his father, whose middle initial is L. So, like, you could say his father is Stephen L. Richards with a period, and he is Stephen L. Richards without one. And, like, that is very confusing. He's not a junior. You know, how do you distinguish him from his father? That's annoying. He was raised in Cache Valley. Richards was the grandson of Willard Richards, an early apostle of the church and colleague of Joseph Smith. Richards married Irene Smith Merrill, a maternal granddaughter of George A. Smith. Okay, in 1900. I didn't know that. The couple had 9 children. One of their sons was Lynn S. Richards, a Utah politician and leader in the church. Okay, there you go. Okay, education and profession. Richards did undergraduate studies at the University of Utah. He received a J.D. degree from the University of Chicago Law School in 1904. Richards began his law school career at the University of Michigan, later transferring to Chicago. I wonder why. After graduating from the University of Chicago, Richards practiced law in Salt Lake City and was a professor of law at the University of Utah. Richards had been considering running for governor of Utah in the 1918 election, but he decided not to do this after being selected as an apostle in 1917. But he had run for a bunch of other things and missed every time, so I can kind of understand why he didn't want to run then. Church leadership. Joseph F. Smith called Richards to be an apostle at the age of 37. As an apostle, Richards became a member of the Superintendency of the Deseret Sunday School Union under David O. McKay in 1918. In April 1919, McKay was appointed Church Commissioner of Education and chose Richards as his first counselor. Okay. Richards would remain a counselor in the Deseret Sunday School Union Superintendency until 1934, when apostles were released from these positions, which freed up the apostles to focus on other aspects of church governance. When McKay became LDS church president, he selected Richards as his first counselor. Okay, so it sounds like he was kind of friends with David O. McKay. Richards served in that position from April 9, 1951 until his death. Richards followed his grandfather, Willard Richards, by serving in the Quorum of the 12 and in the First Presidency. That's kind of cool. The Christus statue that is in the Visitors Center on Temple Square in Salt Lake City was purchased by Richards as a gift to McKay. I didn't know that. Huh. Richards was a mentor to Gordon B. Hinckley as the head of the Radio Publicity and Missionary Literature Committee when Hinckley served as executive secretary. Yes! I remembered that correctly. I'm so proud of myself. Sorry, you know, you gotta be happy about every little thing that you get right. Death. Richards died in Salt Lake City at the age of 79, shortly before his 80th birthday. It doesn't say how, it doesn't even say where he's buried. And the first reference listed says Richards' full middle name was L. Hence his name is usually written without the period after the L. Yeah. It's a true story. It's a true story. Yeah. And I have been careful to put that, but it's confusing because you sometimes see Stephen Longstreth Richards, and you have to remember that was his father, not himself. It is confusing, not gonna lie. So he was involved in the radio. Okay, I feel better now. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like we have as clear a bead on his personality as we have of several other people we've talked about recently. I feel like he was an eloquent person. He seems like kind of full of contradictions. Like you got that ranch side of him that was like building houses and like lassoing horses. And then you got that like scholarly side of him where he wants to go to the University of Chicago and become a lawyer, and then being a college professor at the University of Utah, you know, and then you got this other side of him where it's the kind of the churchy side, which seems pretty solid, like on solid ground, but also doesn't stand out from the other people that he's working with. You know? I mean, is it that they all stand out together, or is it that no one stands out because they're all about on the same level? I don't know what it is. But, like, there's nothing specific I can point to and say, look at that. This is what he is known for. Except for being a lawyer. And working on the radio, I guess. But considering he was, I don't know, he was an apostle for how many years? From 1917 until 1959? That is 42 years. If you're an apostle for 42 years, wouldn't you have done something that you can point to and say, look what I did? You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, served on boards and counselor in the Sunday school. Like, was that even important to him? I don't know. Like, I don't know what he did that was special. I mean, except he acquired the Christus statue and worked on the radio. I don't know. I'm feeling very, kind of adrift, because it's like I can't quite get a beat on this person. I don't know. What do you think? Leave your comments in the down below, because I'll be interested in your opinion of this person. Or maybe you know of more stories that would be more humanizing of him than I do. I mean, that's always possible, so let me know. I would really be interested. Anyways, I found that really interesting, but I just feel like it's missing about half of the information I would like to see, so we'll see if it even exists anywhere. But anyways, but I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.